go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast, or part of it is, because that's why we're shaped like this, because it's not doing the outside and it's not doing us, but it's doing you. So it is being webcast. And mobile phones, please can you all, members and public, switch their phones off or turn to silent. Right. For the benefit of members of the public attending, I would like to explain who everybody is around on the table. My name is Councillor Donald Sherlock, and I'm the chairman of this committee. Beside me is Councillor Anne Court, the deputy chairman, and on either side are the officers who are advising councillors. The councillors sit straight in front of me. And in addition, I would like to explain that the Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be looking at the evidence brought before us tonight and will make a decision based on planning reasons. We are guided by national and local planning guidance and policy. I understand that planning can be emotive, and I ask that everyone remains polite and professional throughout the evening. In addition, may I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to return to their seats once their presentation is complete. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once questioning has finished. And may I ask all committee members to avoid repetition, and I ask members to keep any comments on each item to a maximum of 4 minutes. Thank you. Now we move to our agenda. Apologies for absence and substitutions. I have one substitution, Councillor Leeks for Councillor Tucker. Otherwise, we're all present and correct, aren't we? Yeah. Any declarations of interest? No. Any urgent matters? No. Minutes of the committee meeting held on the 19th of November 2014. May I have your agreement to sign those as being correct? Are they? Apparently, I'm now told they're going to be confirmed at the next meeting. Oh, yes, it says so, doesn't it? So we move on to the applications for planning permission and public participation thereon. We have 3 items tonight relating to Minchin's Lane, Bramley, and we're taking the major one first. And it will be introduced by the officer, and it will then be followed by speakers I have from the Parish Council, Mr. Durrant, objectors, Mr. Flukes and Mr. Charles, and Mr. Joadina. In support, Jeremy Higgins, and that's it. And I will call them up, but we'll start off with Sue Tarvitt to introduce it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application for the erection of 200 dwellings, including 40% affordable housing, with associated new vehicular and pedestrian accesses, footpaths and cycleways, public open space and surface water attenuation features. All matters are reserved except for access, which is for consideration as part of this application. If I can bring your attention to the update paper, which contains the viewing panel report. In addition to that, there's one change to the report, and that's under page 40, under the obligations section on the 4th bullet point. The first sentence should be removed. The second sentence should be retained, followed by the words added to ensure the required visibility is attained or to identify that further traffic calming should be implemented by the applicant. That's a Hampshire County requirement. The officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to the completion of a legal agreement to secure those matters listed at the start of the officer's report.
Thank you. Now, the speakers will start. I gather Mr. Flukes and Mr. Charles, one of you is not here, or both of you are not here. Who's speaking on their behalf?
On behalf of Mr. Charles, my name is
But we start off with Mr. Durrant. Thank you. You have 4 minutes, Mr. Durrant, and we'll give you a warning when there's one to go.
Right. Thank you very much for giving us the time and listening to the Parish Council. It's a rare thing, I guess, for a Parish Council to support a development of this nature. We, the Parish Council, did not do this lightly, nor without community engagement, considerable community engagement. Many, if not all, the objections raised by others and by ourselves at the time would be applicable to any site in Bramley. So with neither an NDP or an LDP in place, we had to consider what tangible benefits this development would offer the community. You can see from our input in the report that you have for this process that we consider the application very thoroughly and consulted with the community. And there's various statistics within that report that I guess you've all read. Wherever you build 200 homes around Bramley Village, be it one large site or 2 or 3 small sites, the impact on traffic will be much the same overall and will exacerbate the difficulties and significant problems we have with traffic flow. We have one C-class road and essentially one loop road north for traffic to move through the village. There's not much to be done about that. We can put some parking places, passing spaces and maybe some traffic calming. But there's not a lot of room to widen roads and do anything else, and no great appetite to widen roads either from the community. So we had to look for other benefits, and you can see those in the report. I'll just summarise them briefly. To get more open public green space from this development, to also get an extension to Cliff Meadow, which is the southwest corner of the proposal. To get better cycle and footpath access, to link up some footpaths and cycle paths within the community through and around the site. There is attached to this in the other applications that you're reviewing tonight, but also we saw the significant expansion of the healthcare facilities via the surgery to be critical to the growing population in Bramley Parish and around the surrounding areas. We also have given our input to some design and layout enhancements which the developers have taken on board. And also we did insist that there be no significant adverse impact on the water flow on site or downstream. And I believe from a report I saw that this has been addressed and there is general sort of happiness and acceptance of that side of the proposal. We've made significant grants this year to the Village Hall, Cliff Meadow Trust and to the church-owned Cross House. So it was now time for us to improve whatever else we can within the community, and this application gives us unique opportunities not achievable through the development of any other site. And the proposed development is adjacent to or close to all the current and proposed new facilities and infrastructure. The vast majority of residents responding to our consultation said that this site was the most suitable for a 200 home development, and given the inevitability of development in Bramley, that negotiations with the developer offered the community tangible benefits. Our biggest concern, you can see from this, is the levels of affordable and social housing in Bramley, which we believe are becoming unsustainable. But again, that's covered in the report. The Parish Council, with public consultation and the majority opinion, seek the best we can for the community in any given situation. We will lose the unique benefits accruing from this specific development if the application is not approved. We need these unique benefits and that this development will bring. We live there, so we have been pragmatic, and we ask you to be the same and respect our views. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrant. Members, any questions for Mr. Durrant? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Durrant. Right, now, Mr. Flukes, Mr. Charles, and Mr. Giovadina. You will have 6 minutes between all three of you, split it up as you wish.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, and then we'll take it in turns as you suggest, I'd just like to make a declaration of a disclosable pecuniary interest, because I have a property in Bramley on the street, and therefore that's why I'm speaking as a member of the public. And so, having made my remarks, I will then withdraw from the chamber and take no further part in the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Good. Thank you.
I'd like to thank members of the committee for visiting the site. I'd like to raise 4 key points. First, the local plan. This authority changed position on the local plan by withdrawing the Minchin's Lane site. It removed it from the plan to enable a neighbourhood development plan to take place. The NDP has progressed, and local residents have also responded as part of that survey that they'd rather prefer developments of around 50 homes rather than one big development. And that's been produced in the Parish Magazine, on Facebook and so on. So these proposals fly in the face of what local residents have said, and I believe the neighbourhood development plan should be allowed to complete. It may be that some homes are built at this site, but the process should be allowed to be finished. Second, highways. The access proposed up Minchin's Lane is absolutely bizarre. This is a single-track road with passing places. The suggestion that a no-right turn will solve all the problems is ridiculous. First of all, it isn't enforced, and second, it doesn't solve the problem. In fact, it recognises there is a problem. They recognise that there is a problem with Minchin's Lane, but it doesn't deal with it and doesn't pay for it. It will see the junction with the C32 becoming very dangerous as people use it to turn around on a bend. The junction at the end with the railway bridge is dangerous already. And I believe that if you are minded to pass this application, you should seek increased highway contributions and use it to improve the junction with the railway bridge at the northern end of Minchin's Lane and improve the bend at that end. You need to reconfigure the road, take the trees out and create a proper junction. This does not do that. And you also should, in my view, stop this daft no-right turn policy unless you completely reconfigure the road so that the main road appears to go into the development to really change behaviour. Third point, landscape impact. This development in the field next to Cliff Meadow is unacceptable in my view because, as proposed, it would destroy the current
You've had
perspective
2 minutes.
on open space, and there is no screening being detailed. My final sentence, Chairman, would be that you should be making a decision based on planning grounds, not second-guessing what might happen if you turn it down, what might happen if the applicant appeals, or if the inspector determines it. I've raised some major concerns, and I ask that you refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
My name is Christopher Flux. I've lived in Bramley for 33 years. I note that in order to provide safe access to the site, it will be necessary to cut back mature hedges and impose a speed limit to the north of the site. Without enforcement, rural speed limits are rarely observed. Who will maintain the cut-back hedges when the developer has left the site? Who will enforce the requirement to turn left on exiting the site? The only fatal road accident that I can remember in Bramley occurred at this very spot at the site entrance in about 1996. This is not mentioned in any of the transport assessments. Nothing is proposed to tackle the regular flooding of Minchin's Lane at the site entrance and further down the lane near the entrance to Cliff Meadow. I quote from the document, "The assessment of the A33 Bramley Road roundabout has been carried out using Arcady Junction modelling software. The results of this assessment show the roundabout is currently operating over capacity on the A33 northern and southern arms." Fine, that'll be all right then. The visual amenity is very important to the villagers, as this sloping field provides a rural backdrop to the Cliff Meadow, the granary and Stocks Farm and buildings. The proposed development would leave the Cliff Meadow sandwiched between a traffic jam on the street and a housing estate marching up the slope. No amount of mitigation can hide the urbanisation of our farmland. Even the conservation officer agrees with this. Oh, again, that'll be all right. The flood risk on the site seems to be understated, and we have photographic evidence to support this, with the culvert which carries the water under the railway running at capacity. Foul water drainage is also a problem, and Thames Water were not expecting the 200 houses to be on one site. Sherfield treatment plant struggles with water quality discharged into the Loddon. Again, that'll be all right. I could continue, but I won't because I've run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sit on. My name is Ian Everett. I'm reading this on behalf of Glenn Charles. In relation to the traffic assessment addendum of 10th of October, it is noted that the two sets of ATC data were collected by the transport consultant, the second being in a different location to that of the first. It is standard practice in collecting speed data to ensure that the surveying equipment is placed either side of the proposed axis to ensure a representative speed is obtained at the location of the axis. This has not occurred on this occasion. In addition, a guess has been made of the potential 85% wet weather speeds based on the range between the two surveys. This is totally unacceptable in the opinion of Mr. Charles as a professional chartered engineer within the transport consultancy profession, and would undoubtedly fail at any appeal should there be one. As above, until the correct surveys are undertaken and the correct results be obtained and analysed, this application should be refused. It is noted that the addendum suggests that the street has adequate capacity to hold a queue that would be created due to the railway barriers. However, no real analysis has been undertaken with respect to the worst-case delay and the effect this would have, firstly on rat running along the substandard road corridors of Minchin's and Oliver's Lanes, nor the blocking of the side roads of Cooper's Lane or Ringshall Gardens. As such, the addendum is incomplete. Until this work is undertaken and the results confirm nil detriment to the existing surrounding streets and lanes, this application should be refused. It is noted that no response has been provided to the flawed access junction analysis I confirmed in previous correspondence. I am certain this analysis is incorrect, and as such the junction could be potentially unsafe. For this reason, this application should be refused. The flood risk assessment dated 17th of April has not been revised to address the contradiction to the national planning policy with respect to forms of flooding other than fluvial. Historical evidence held by Hampshire Highways and the Parish Council confirms that Minchin's Lane suffers severe pluvial flooding.
You've had 2 minutes. Can you wind up, please?
Until this has been resolved, this application should be refused.
Thank you. Now, if you just remain there. Members, have you got any questions for either Mr. Fluke, Mr. Jabardina or Mr. Emmett? No? Thank you all three very much. Next, please, Jeremy Higgins in support. You have 4 minutes, Mr. Higgins, and I will give you notice of the final minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of the applicant, Charles Church. The application before you is the culmination of 1 year's worth of meetings and consultation with both the Parish Council and the local community. As a result of this process, you have a scheme before you which embraces the concept of localism and will deliver infrastructure that the community wants and supports. As you are aware, the draft local plan allocates 200 new homes to be provided in Bramley, but does not allocate a specific site. Through our discussions with the Parish Council and the local community, we have established that this is the preferred site to accommodate the planned 200 dwellings. Unlike previous developments in Bramley, which have been developed further and further away from the key local facilities, the application site is centrally located within the village and within walking distance of the key facilities. Furthermore, the applicant is making a significant investment in the local infrastructure in terms of new pavements, cycleways, and a substantial contribution towards the provision of a footbridge over the railway line, which will encourage both future and existing residents to use non-car modes to access local facilities. The proposed scheme also seeks to give Bramley a greater identity through the provision of a significant extension to Cliff Meadow, to give Bramley a central green space which would become the focus for community events. This builds on the significant community structure already in place at Cliff Meadow. There are no objections from any of the statutory consultees, and the Parish Council have voted to support the application. Thames Water have identified 2 alternative solutions for foul drainage, both of which would not only accommodate the flows that the proposed scheme would generate, but would improve the capacity of the system downstream. They have also confirmed that the treatment works that will receive the foul flows has capacity to accommodate them. I understand that at the site visit a number of matters were raised. Regarding the proposed access and the turning facility that's been referred to, this has been specifically requested by the Highway Authority. We have complete agreement with the County Council regarding the proposed scheme, including a substantial transport contribution of over £500,000. £200,000 of this contribution has been earmarked for improvements to the local highway network, and this could be used to provide additional passing places if required. The applicant is also providing a contribution of nearly £1 million to extending the existing primary school. Regarding street lighting, if any street lighting is required, it would be low-key given the site's edge of countryside location. Finally, regarding landscaping, as the case officer has advised in her update note, this would be dealt with and secured at the reserve matters stage. You need to regard both this application and the other 2 applications you will be hearing after this as a package, with the funding of the proposed surgery extension and improvements to Cliff Meadow being provided by this application. As such, the approval of the applications for the surgery and the improvements to Cliff Meadow will not result in their delivery unless this application is approved. The 3 applications have been submitted in the context of securing negotiated consents without having recourse to the appeal process. The package of proposals comprises providing the land required for the doctor's surgery extension for free, providing a £330,000 contribution toward the cost of construction of the surgery extension, and providing a refurbished and extended car park at Cliff Meadow, or a contribution of £120,000 towards the refurbishment of the existing car park and other works. Contracts have been signed and put in place to secure all of these proposals. Given the restrictions to be imposed by the seal regulations, which come in April 2015, and the timescale for an appeal, should you refuse this application, the package of proposals before you will not be capable of delivery. In summary, I would urge you to support the officer's recommendation to grant outline planning permission. Both myself and the applicant would be very happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Members, have you got any questions for Mr. Higgins? Councillor Tomlin, followed by Councillor Franklin, followed by Councillor Potter. Oh, and I should just say to you all, the webcast is now not working. I don't know what we read into that, but...
Yeah. Yes,
Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Higgins, part of the process of your application has involved, as you rightly say, over a year of consultation with local residents, parish councils, ward members. Can I ask you, would you be prepared to make sure that this consultation carries on with the officers, with yourselves, with those people mentioned, over reserve matters, so that we can actually make this particular, shall I say, sensitive site even more acceptable?
I think the simple answer to your question is yes. Of course, we've embraced, I say, the concept of localism and full engagement with the local community in the outline application, and I see no reason why that would not continue with the reserve matters stage. Certainly, concerns have been expressed by members of the parish council that the development, if approved, is attractive and has architectural details that are found within Bramley, and those have been discussed with the parish council already.
Just one supplementary, if I may. The other question, you talked about the access in and out of the site, that the Highways Authority were basically instrumental in that scheme. So if that scheme was changed, would you, as the applicant, have any issue with it being a different scheme to that proposed?
Access is not a reserved matter, so it has to be considered on the basis of what is before you tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Frankham.
Yes, I just would like the assurance that should this application go ahead, that you will ensure the quality of the build and do that with the Basingstoke officers and not an outside company, and that when it's completed, that the completion is signed off by our Basingstoke to ensure the quality. I'm sure Charles Church will know. I'm not going to name the road at the moment, but there's a road that has been built so badly, there's even talk of pulling these houses down and they're not even a year old. So please, can we make sure that the quality is up to what Basingstoke and Dean expect and not what we've seen in this other road that I'm quite happy to talk to you about off the mic, but I really do need to make sure that it's good quality.
I think the simple answer to that question is yes. Charles Church take a great pride in their reputation of being a quality house builder and developing well-designed homes. That's what they built their reputation on. As you will have seen from the outline application, we prepared a very detailed design and access statement which looks thoroughly at the design characteristics of Bramley, and at the reserve matter stage there would be a further design statement explaining why the proposed schemes would be reflective of the local vernacular and attractive in their design. And of course, if at the end of the day both the officers and you have control over what happens, if you and the officers felt that the design wasn't of adequate quality, you could of course refuse the reserve matters application.
Yes, but I need the assurance that it will be. I will name the other company. The other company is Premier, and the fact that the completions were signed off while workmen were still working in there, and the houses are of very poor quality. And I know Charles Church really do treasure their name, but I'm afraid in one road it is not a good name, and I don't want to see other people, other residents as I've had to put up with, coming crying their eyes out to me because the houses are of poor quality.
I think I probably addressed those comments in my previous comments.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Higgins, keeping my back to you, but it's the system we've got tonight. Noting that Network Rail hasn't raised any objection to the planning application, it does go on to say, obviously, it would be interested to know what measures might be suggested to mitigate against the impact that the development will have on the level crossing. And I know you made mention of a contribution to a footbridge over the railway line. Can you tell me a little more about what's been negotiated or discussed in that connection, please?
Certainly. We had direct discussions with Network Rail and looked at a number of options because we were well aware of the issues associated with the level crossing. Basically, the level crossing in Bramley is the safest kind of level crossing there is. It's fully gated. It's very difficult for people to cross onto the tracks when the gates are down. We looked into the provision of a footbridge, and we've discovered that Hampshire County Council had already undertaken a study at providing this. As I said in my address, we're prepared to provide a substantial part of the transport contributions towards funding that footbridge.
I mean, can I just check exactly what that means? I know you spoke about £200,000 for highway improvements. That's in the general, is it, but not specific to the footbridge itself, is that right? That would be included within that £200,000 provision, would it?
I'm just getting the specific figures from the applicant. as I mentioned in my address, the contribution is over £500,000, and that breaks down as £150,000 for improvements to the A33, £200,000 towards the footbridge, and a further £200,000 towards off-site highway works in and around the village.
Any more questions from members? Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Right, members, questions to officers, and can I introduce Stuart Morton from the Hampshire County Council Highways, who's come to answer any questions you may have about the access, etc. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I actually probably know the answer to this one already, but I think it's an important question to ask because it's so important for areas such as this, which have got an allocation in the local plan without any sites being specified. If approved, would the expressed intention of both the Parish Council and the Neighbourhood Planning Committee to act responsibly by stating that this is the most appropriate site for the proposed allocation of 200 houses in Bramley in the local plan, could this in any sense be honoured? In other words, if another application comes forward prior to the adoption of the local plan, would the fact that the allocation is already met in any way affect the decision?
As my report says, in determining this application, it wouldn't prevent us, we wouldn't be able to say no to another scheme coming into Bramley, particularly in light of the current land supply situation in the borough and also the recent local plan inspector's letter on the local plan in terms of housing numbers. But as and when that application, if it did come in, we'd have to deal with that one on its merits at that point in time.
Councillor Frankham.
Yes, I just wonder, is there any way that should this go through, that we can actually condition that our building regs are involved, or does that come in when it's the full application? Because I am really, really concerned, very concerned.
Not through the planning process, so the building regulations process is a separate process, and effectively the issue there is that a developer can choose to either use the council's building control function or an approved inspector, so that would be at a later stage. It has no impact on the planning process at all.
Any more questions? Councillor Tomlin, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I have got, I think, 3 questions, if I may run through them. The first one, again, to officers. We heard concerns about the drainage infrastructure. Have we got commitments from Thames Water? I know they've requested Grampian conditions, I believe, in our paperwork. But that they will manage the rest of the water flow from this site, not just off the site, but all the way through down to the River Loddon, through Sherford-on-Loddon and such like.
If I draw your attention to page 51, where we deal with flood risk and drainage, Thames Water, there were issues in terms of sewer capacity. There has been, the developer has commissioned a report from Thames Water to look into that in more detail, and basically, as the agent I think pointed out, there are options that can be considered, and also that the treatment facility has the capacity to deal with it. So Thames Water are more than happy to deal with it as a Grampian style conditions. There are different options there that can be put in place to then accommodate this development, and it's up to then Thames Water and the developer to decide which of those options they then proceed, and that would be covered by the Grampian condition.
Thank you. The next question really is perhaps from our County Council Highways gentleman. Really, could you explain, well, 2 things really. We heard from one of our objectors about what they considered from a engineer in the similar profession inadequate traffic data. If you could perhaps comment on that. And then secondly, if you could give us some enlightenment as to how you think the left turn solution is going to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the reference was to the speed data as being inaccurate. We asked the applicant to undertake a number of speed surveys. In assessing visibility displays, you also require the speed at the point of where the visibility display will be. As was identified, the 85th percentile was higher than what the visibility display offered here is, but the applicant has put in, as part of the proposal, some traffic calming measures to the north of the access, which will serve to reduce the speed coming from that direction. Now, through the Section 278 process, which is the process required to get the junction implemented, we've enforced the applicant that they will undertake speed surveys once the priority chicane is in place, and should the required speed not be met, which we would be surprised about based on the level of traffic calming that's being put forward here, but if it's not, then they're required to provide further mitigation to bring speeds down to the appropriate level to achieve the visibility. The left turn provision, that has come about because of the Highway Authority's concern with levels of traffic flow on Minchin's Lane, Oliver's Lane and Bramley Lane, which effectively serves or could serve as a rat run to avoid the level crossing. If vehicles route via those directions, they travel on relatively narrow roads. They go through two junctions which visibility is limited at, and the junction of Minchin's Lane and Bramley Lane, Oliver's Lane, so the north of Minchin's Lane, to the right-hand side is the bridge crossing, so there's a humpback bridge there. So it would be extremely difficult to do anything at that location, so visibility would always be difficult there. The junction of Oliver's Lane and Bramley Lane has difficult visibility to the left as you're coming out of Oliver's Lane, so it would be difficult to do anything there as well. If we didn't restrict movements coming out of the site access, there would likely be an increase in traffic flow going around that rat run and indeed past the school. So the left turn provision is basically, or the banned right turn movement is basically to reduce the potential for traffic which we deem would be inappropriate to use the rural route to avoid the level crossing. So that's the philosophy that's behind the restricted movement. From the other direction, if people are coming into the development, if we allowed a left turn in from Minchin's Lane from the north, any vehicle, well not any vehicles that approach the level crossing from the east could see the level crossing is down, turn right and route via the, we'll call it rat run, into Minchin's Lane. Now I understand there is already, that manoeuvre is already happening, and there's sometimes a police officer that stood on the corner to stop people overtaking cars waiting at the level crossing and turning right into Bramley Lane. So the philosophy of the design is to design out those potential ambitions to undertake those manoeuvres which you don't seem as suitable.
Sorry, I'm just coming back on that. So how would you imagine that this is going to be policed?
There will be a TRO, so the manoeuvre will be illegal, so it will be enforceable. There is obviously already a police officer that stands down the road. That isn't to say there would be one here all the time, but it is an illegal manoeuvre that they would be undertaking. It's perhaps, the design has come from not necessarily enforcing it, but designing out the manoeuvre. Now the design you see in front of you today reduces the ease at which the manoeuvre can be undertaken. Now this is the design in principle. There is potentially, through the design process, there could be a more stringent design put forward, but it's about designing out the desire to undertake that manoeuvre, and it will be backed up with a TRO.
Councillor Bowen, followed by Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this is just an outline application, but can I be assured that the 40% of affordable housing element is not going to be shoved over by the railway line and will be spread throughout the site?
If I can answer that, the legal agreement actually secures that the affordable housing will be spread throughout the site in groups of between 15 and 20. So in total there would be 80 across the whole site if it's 200 dwellings, but those would be scattered through the development.
Councillor Potter?
Mine's a highways issue. I'm following on from Councillor Tomlin, if I may. It's in a sense repeating the point, but I just wanted to get a further comment about it. It does seem to me that where road designs of this sort are introduced, they do need to be practical and enforceable. And I would have thought, human nature being what it is, people will drive out of that site 50 metres down the road, turn round, and then go back up Mitchins Lane going north. I'd probably be one of these offenders, I have to say, in terms of the restriction that's going to be placed on it. And if that is the case, I genuinely would want to see, and I think some of the public speakers said this, the increased highway contribution and improvements used on Minchin Lane going north. It seems to me there would be a number of things that could be done there, A, in terms of traffic calming, which I know have been mooted, and additional lay-by areas, passing points, which would improve the traffic flow both ways on Minchin's. That's going to be, I think, the reality of it. And I don't think we would be doing anybody any favours if we denied that. It seems to me that's where the money should be spent, with some recognition until something else happens in Bramley, let me say, in terms of road network. But that's going to be the reality over the immediate period. So the money should be spent in improving Minchin's Lane to make it more safe and more effective as a road. That's the view I have. Perhaps I could just have your comments on that.
Thank you. In terms of U-turners, it wouldn't be an illegal manoeuvre to undertake a U-turn down the road, but the journey time could potentially be longer if the U-turn was undertaken. If they went down to the street and then U-turned there and went all the way around, back up Minchin's Lane, across Oliver's Lane and down Bramley Lane, it's circa 1.7 miles. Now, the length of time that takes may rule out, or is potentially going to rule out, any savings achieved by not sitting in what may be a queue at the level crossing, should the level crossing barrier be down. So people will probably quickly learn that they won't necessarily make a saving by doing a U-turn when they come out of the development. That isn't to say that people who are not going into the development wouldn't still potentially make a saving if they do that rat run. So we're trying to discourage flows along that route. We have, as part of the Section 106, which is still being negotiated, but we have, as the applicant identified, sought some funds of circa £550,000. There is provision within there where monies could be spent on rural lanes. Now, it might be that there could be a potential for a passing place on Minchin's Lane. We would have some concerns that that may attract traffic, but it is something that can be considered. It isn't just the width of the highway that is of concern there. It is the other junctions that we mentioned. And with the funds that would be available, that would never be enough to cover any mitigation that would be required at those junctions to improve visibility.
Any more questions, members? Yes, Councillor Dunlop.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick one. It's basically wanting a statement from our highways officer. We've been talking about this railway junction, this level crossing, and it's been mentioned the possibility of that being replaced by a bridge. Now, being a person that hates level crossings anyway, have you any comment to make on that? Is that going to be a possibility?
The reference to a bridge is not a vehicular bridge. it would be a bridge to accommodate pedestrians getting from one side to the other. So the level crossing would still be in place.
Any more questions, members? Councillor Potter.
I'm sorry to come back. It was just one thing. I know Councillor Joe Warden had mentioned it, or Mr. Joe Warden, as he is here as a public speaker, I guess. But could I just ask a question about the landscaping aspect that he mentioned, because that doesn't seem to be unreasonable. I think, you know, from the site visit we undertook, there was one particular area where I certainly would agree with the fact that increased landscaping would be of some significant importance, and I wouldn't have thought that was an unreasonable condition for us to seek to apply in terms of the outline planning approval. I mean, could I have officers' comments on that, please?
As has been explained earlier, the landscaping would be a reserved matters application that would come in the future, so it wouldn't be something that you would secure by way of condition as part of the outline. We could put an informative on, bringing it to the developer applicant's attention that the committee raised concerns in terms of the amount of landscaping and that it needs to be dealt with sensitively, for example. I would just bring to your attention that the landscape officer raised no objection to the proposals and is happy with the schemes that they've come up with in terms of just the general strategy in their approach. But by all means, we could use an informative just to give the developer a bit more direction in terms of where your concerns are.
Happy? Any more questions? Well, we'll move into debate, and Councillor Tomlin, as the ward councillor, perhaps you'd like to start.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as we've all heard, there's one or two things I think for members to chew over by debate. We have a situation clearly where this development is an opportunist development creeping in with our defences down, no local plan, neighbourhood development plan not yet in place, still looming, etc., and also the state of, as we realise, the appeals. You've also heard that clearly, should it go to appeal, should we refuse it, then we wouldn't get the benefits that have been agreed should it go through tonight. We've also heard there's some consternation, some concern about this particular traffic issue along Minson's Lane itself. And you also heard from the applicant that the scheme in front of us is the scheme we have to decide on tonight. So if we didn't like that, we'd have to consider risking a rejection and losing all of those benefits. So we seem to have some things to debate about how our hands are tied in this particular instance. But moving it forward, I think we're hearing that perhaps informatives about street lighting, other money being spent on better passing places realistically on the road that is going to get busier, and a little bit more landscaping are the things I think we perhaps will be best spending our time on. So with that, I hope we can enter into debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Potter.
I was very grateful, genuinely, for the sort of critique by the parish council, which was comprehensive and you know, substantial and inclusive, really, of just all of the issues, I think, really. And in terms of summary, obviously they come to the view that, you know, they've looked at what's best for the majority of the community, and I think have said that they would want to support the application, and I understand the logic behind that. I mean, I was disappointed to see the commentary around the 40% affordable housing provision, but I think we will deal with that in regard to the decision we make in regard to the recommendation from the officers. I certainly wouldn't want to see that compromise in any way at all, and I am pleased to hear, because of the question raised by Councillor Bown, that, you know, that will be affordable housing that will be spread throughout the development and not just concentrated in one place. And to be frank, I mean, I think, as Councillor Tomlin has said, I mean, there are some things that we would perhaps have concerns about, some of which could be helped a little by informatives if we're able to agree them here this evening. But beyond that, I would think simply that we ought to go straightforwardly with the recommendation made by officers, and I'd certainly move approval, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded. Right, we have a proposal. Do you want to speak? Councillor Frost.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've listened with, with great alacrity to what's been said this evening. I'd like to thank all the speakers for that. My only one concern is the junction, and I think the officer from Hampshire County Council has, with his final comments, given some reassurance that with Minchin's Lane there is the potential of some extra funds helping the rat run there. The only thing I would say is that his comment about people understanding eventually that there will be no benefit to the rat run, because it would take longer to actually do the rat run than actually sit and wait, I think is potentially misguided. As someone who spends a lot of time driving around, I'd much rather be rolling in a car, even if it's a couple of miles longer, than actually sat in a traffic jam just kicking my heels, and strongly suspect that other people do the same. I wasn't able to make the site visit, but I did actually go over the weekend and had a look at the lane myself, and I was quite disturbed about just how many verges were overridden, etc. So I am reassured that the Hampshire County Council traffic officer has said that there are potential monies available to improve Minchin's Lane, and for that I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. So, hearing it's been moved, can we just have a comment, therefore, from the officers about how we can note members' concerns about the passing places on Minchin's Lane, the landscaping, and perhaps sympathy. We said it reserve matters, but certainly bringing it up to make sure it's captured about street lighting. So those three items, please.
Chair, I think perhaps Sue and Highways Officer will be able to respond on the highways point regarding the passing spaces, but on the informative, certainly on the landscaping, we can bring to the developer's attention via an informative that when reserve matters comes forward, the particular issues that have been raised this evening in terms of the quality of landscaping in particular areas. With regards to street lighting, I assume the point is that the potential urbanising impact of street lighting. I mean, that would be subject to further detailed design, so we can raise it as an issue via an informative to the developer, so that when they undertake the discussions with the county regarding what street lighting would be necessary for works along that part of the site, that again your comments about potential impacts or urbanising impacts are taken on board. I can't say what that outcome would be, but it would certainly raise the issue.
With regards to the monies being directed towards additional passing bays along Minchin's Lane, we wouldn't normally put that in as an informative. An informative is there to guide the applicant, the potential developer in the future. It's something that we can raise, and obviously having members of Hampshire County here now, they're fully aware of those concerns, but we can raise it with them. I have actually just spoken to them in regards to street lighting, and it is acknowledged by county that that side of Bramley is a low lighting area, so they're fully aware of that, and that would be part of the design process. But by all means, we put it in an informative. It then brings it to the attention of the developer, so when they do come back in with that design process, they are taking that on board at that point in time.
Right. Any more comments before we vote? Right. Those in favour of approval? Unanimous. Officer, will you?
Basically to confirm that the application has been approved, subject to the additional informatives with regards to landscaping and street lighting.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 2, Cliff Meadow, Minchin's Lane, Bramley. And may I thank both the county officers for coming to help us. Thank you. This is for the construction of a combined footpath and cycleway with low-level lighting and landscaping. And I have to speak. There's Mr. Durrant. And, Mr. Durrant, Mr. Durrant from the Parish Council, Mr. Higgins in support, and Ward Councillor Joe Adina as well. Thank you. And Sue Talbot, will you introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As explained, this is a separate application for works at Cliff Meadow. It involves a combined footway, 2 footbridges, resurfacing and extension of the existing car park, and the creation of new pedestrian accesses. The application can be dealt with in its own right and should be considered as an application in its own right. It's the deliverability of the proposals which is then linked and tied under a Section 106 agreement with the residential application that you've already considered. If I can bring your attention to the update report and the results, the viewing panel report, and the officer's recommendation is for approval subject to conditions.
Right, thank you. Mr. Durrant.
Right, thank you again. The Cliff Meadows Centre is a real focal point for Bramley residents. We, the Parish Council, along with the Borough, have been developing a new facility there, a new building, and we are desperately trying to make this a real good recreational centre for everyone, in not only in the immediate community but around the parish in total. This application gives the opportunity to, through the path, to link the C32 with the proposed cycle and footpath routes through the development to the north, thereby linking up a bit of a route also with the paths through the Frith Centre. So it will keep cyclists and a lot of walkers off the roads and give them a route through. And we see that as not only a positive for recreation but also a safer route. The car park there is in poor condition. With the increased traffic that we anticipate having 2 buildings there as of this coming Saturday, we will have 2 buildings there, and that car park needs to be improved. It's an expensive undertaking. The Cliff Meadow Trust do not have the funds to do that, and this whole package of 3 applications generates the funds in order to be able to put that car park into a better condition. So we as a community would ask you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrant. Any questions from members for Mr. Durrant? No? Thank you, sir. In support, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be somewhat briefer than the last one. As part of our discussions with the Parish Council, we established at an early stage there was an opportunity to provide enhanced facilities for the benefit of the local community on Cliff Meadow. This includes the new links that are displayed on the screen to the open space known as Cliff Mead that will be provided on the site you've just granted outline permission for, and improving and extending the existing car park so this could serve users of both Cliff Meadow and Cliff Mead. We also established it would be desirable for a combined footpath cycleway link along the eastern edge of Cliff Meadow to be provided in order that residents of the approved residential scheme you've just granted permission for could be encouraged to use the local facilities and services which are within walking distance of the site without using their cars. In summary, I would urge you to support the officer's recommendation to grant permission for the scheme. I would be happy to answer any questions again.
Thank you, Mr. Durrant. Any questions for Mrs. Durrant? Thank you. That's it. No, none. Thank you. Right, questions to officers, please, members. Any questions? Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Just the question of, there was a comment at the viewing panel about lighting for the footpath, whether if there are lighting proposals that they're not going to be too, what's the word, dramatic to the local residents, or it's not going to be a path that's completely dark so that it's sort of rendered not particularly safe in the evening. So hopefully some sympathetic lighting is to be planned. Thank you.
Was that a question or a comment?
It's low-level lighting that's proposed.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Councillor Potter.
Forgive me for, probably sounds very naive, but in terms of low-level lighting, I mean, is that height or intensity?
We haven't got the details in terms of it's indicated it's low-level lighting, but we haven't got any details per se, so we can put a condition on.
Right, meantime, do we have any other questions for officers? No.
It's indicated that it's low-level lighting, bollard lighting, but I don't have the actual detailed design of the lighting, so we can secure that by a condition.
Right. There's no more questions, I don't think, are there? Do we want to go into debate then, please? Councillor Good.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would wish to support the Mr. Durant's request that we grant this approval. So on that basis, I would like to propose that we approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I've got two proposers. Three. Those in favour of approval? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Would you?
Thank you, Chair, that the application be approved subject to one additional condition in terms of the type and type of low-level lighting that's proposed.
Right, we move to item number 3, which is the Clift Surgery at Minchin's Lane. Again, the officer presenting will be Sue Tarvett. I have speakers in Mr. Durrant, Mr. Higgins, Dr. Nigel Fisher, and that's it. So, Sue, would you present it, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application at the doctor's surgery at the Cliff Surgery. It's a single-storey extension. It's the provision of a new vehicular access and also additional car parking, one area of car parking for staff and also an increased area of parking for people who are using the surgery. If I draw your attention to the update once again in the viewing panel report, and the officer's recommendation is for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Durrant again, please.
Thank you again. We in Bramley are blessed with an excellent medical facility, and we wish this standard to be maintained and continued as the population grows, not only within the village but also within the parish and the surrounding area. This is the third element of the 3 applications, and it will complete the much needed infrastructure improvements within the community. This is a unique opportunity to fund this enhanced facility, and we would ask you to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrant. Any questions from members? No? Lovely, thank you. Mr. Higgins and Dr. Nigel Fisher, please. You have 4 minutes between you, and I'll give you a warning when there's one to go.
Thank you, Chairman. The need for an extension was brought up at an early stage in our discussions with the Parish Council. This was led to meetings with Dr. Fisher and his colleagues to understand their needs and how we could assist them. As I've explained, this proposed scheme is a one-off opportunity, not only because of the applicants are prepared to offer a significant funding towards the scheme, but also because of the applicant's ability to bring forward the land at nil cost to the doctors. I'll now hand over to Dr. Fisher, who will address you in more detail regarding the proposed scheme and the need for it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Cliff Surgery was built in 1991 and extended in 2006 to accommodate new housing which had taken place in the previous years. Since this time, the German Road development has been added, along with a 70-bed nursing home. We are now attracting also patients from Sherfield Park. This has substantially increased our list size over the past few years, coupled with movement of work out of the hospital into primary care. This has dramatically increased our workload. Consequently, this has impacted the surgery in a number of areas. Car parking. This is a constant issue with patients who have listed this as one of their main concerns in our practice surveys over the past 10 years. This proposed plan will create 11 parking spaces for start at the rear of the building, with a separate entrance, freeing up and increasing the capacity at the front to 23. We've increased the number of doctors over the past few years from 3 to 6, currently working from 5 consulting rooms, sharing this with a midwife. These consulting rooms are used at full capacity. We have 2 specialist nurses and now 2 healthcare assistants working from 2 treatment rooms, again at full capacity. We only have 2 small admin rooms, one used by a medical secretary, a data input clerk, a community matron and a health visitor, and in the other room a full-time practice manager, full-time IT manager and a finance clerk. Currently meetings are held in one of the consulting rooms. There's no realistic prospect of securing NHS funding for improvement in the foreseeable future. Charles Church has negotiated on behalf with the landowner to release land adjacent to the surgery, which will allow a significant expansion and also will allow us to continue to provide the excellent care to our patients. The patient group has been very supportive, and we're extremely lucky to have a proactive parish council help us negotiate with Charles Church this expansion and improvement of the surgery. It will produce a new consulting room for an additional doctor with a dedicated nursing block fully equipped to full NHS standards with an extra room for the support staff. Without this help from Charles Church, we've not been able to secure the land from the landowner, having tried on a number of occasions in the past, let alone raise the money to build the extension. My 20 years of general practice, this is truly a unique offer, and I'm extremely grateful to the Parish Council supporting their local doctor's surgery expansion, which will enable us to provide the care of our patients that our patients expect in this modern age.
In summary, I would urge you to support the officer's recommendation to approve the scheme, and again, Dr. Fisher and I will be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Fisher and Mr. Higgins? No? Thank you both very much. Right, members. Questions to officers? Any questions for officers? No? Then we move to debate. Councillor Tomlin.
I'd like to move for approval as officers' recommendations.
Thank you. It's been seconded. And those in favour of approval?
just confirm that the application is approved subject to the conditions on the agenda paper.
Thank you all very much indeed. That concludes our business for the evening.